Another new area. Though more lilac beetles. Although that was clearly not something as friendly. Oh, leave them alone. Oh. Was this the area he hadn't been able to see before? This felt relatively familiar. Interesting. Well, if nothing else, it looped around just fine. This place really was near identical to... What was that? A shadow Umber Hulk? Was that what that had been? That is exactly what that was. He was a bit less... Well... He didn't have much choice, really. Well, okay, perhaps not as much of a challenge as Victor had assumed it was going to be. Whew. Seemed even creatures from the Underdark had been pulled inside. He'd only heard stories of those. A portal of some sort. Could he enter it? Ah, it was another caged portal. That was actually relatively tempting, all things considered. Something had tried to attack him. Another of these Umber Hulks. Whew. Seems he didn't have any other options, really. As tempting as it was to return to his lair and its safety, he wanted to explore that other exit first. At least he knew which way to go to return to his lair now, though. Damn rats. They really didn't end, did they? Another. Well then. Time to go back into the forest. Now, where was this other exit going to lead him to? Deeper into the forest. That's exactly what he wanted. Ah, well, he had found it, it would seem. Oh, and it ripped out his staff. Well, if the creature wanted to play that way... then they'd play that way. Though the damn slick blood going everywhere was a pain. There. That would help things a bit. As with this. And this. Now, where was this damn tree? Let's see how it liked his new rod as well. Being coated in this green goo was likely the worst part of all of this. This was working, however. His defensive auras were slowly wearing down the other tentacles. His elemental was distracting it. Perhaps if he could pick up his staff. It still hurt quite a bit, though. He needed to equip his staff. Ugh, he couldn't even move properly. No, there was no point trying to use the staff, it was clear. It would just rip it out of his hands again. His original plan was definitely the better choice here. It was fighting desperately because it knew it was going to die. Oh. And the heart and bulb of the creature most assuredly wanted his staff back as well. Well, that had been his first challenge. And to reapply his memorization for each of the enchantments. Certainly didn't want to forget these mid-battle. That had been the most difficult, but only due to annoyances, really. That blood, especially. And its ability to disarm him. But it was dead now. He supposed he could plant the seed himself using the shovel if he wished, though he was hesitant to do so, unless there was a clear benefit to it. More likely, he'd just use it in order to create a new enchantment, perhaps analyze it. Where was the little one? There she was.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I don't feel the trees watching me anymore, and let me try Mother's locket again. I think it might work.
She had a locket possibly that teleported her back to her mother? Well, that was none of his business. You're welcome, little one.
Mother's locket doesn't seem as bright as it was before, and I fear I can only use it a couple more times. I can see home now. Oh, thank you, thank you.
Well, if nothing else, it seemed he'd done a good deed. She also handed him the locket. He hadn't even asked for it. It only had a couple more charges in its enchantments, but examining it closely, he could feel it. The spells weren't amazing, but they were quite useful all the same. If nothing else, he would be able to sell it for a nice price or deconstruct it. Due to his lack of knowledge in the arcane fields, not arcane, in the divine fields, it was a bit difficult for him to create enchantments that could heal him. Using the amulet as a basis, he might be able to remedy that. But for now, he wanted to return to his lair. He'd used many of his spells and charges. He'd even had to fall back on using his rod that he'd created. No, granted, it had worked very well. But that hadn't exactly been the initial goal. At least with this, he knew he'd gotten rid of that treant, and thankfully, the Shadow Dryad would be able to live in relative peace now. Not live, rest in relative peace. The narrator can't talk today, it seems. For now, it was time to return to his lair and rest and recover a bit. Reaching out to touch the portal, before flashing forward towards the rift that led to his estate. Taking a very, very slow breath, he would content himself to return to his laboratory. He needed to rest and recover for a bit, and, well, perhaps he would try to work on all these new oils and extracts that he'd managed to acquire. Either way, he truly did need a bit of rest. Having rested and recovered, he had decided against working on too much. He could understand the draw, but there was too much to go over, frankly, and he didn't have time just yet. He did, however, want to explore something that the Shadow had talked about. It was apparently something along the lines of a Shadow Festival. And if you recall, this portal could take him directly to it. Now that he'd explored the Shadowlands a fair enough amount, he was curious on exactly what the festival itself entailed. Reaching out to touch once more against the portal. The Festival of Twilight. And it appeared to bring him to something very similar to the Anarok Desert. Interesting. Well, no one appeared hostile. You may as well enjoy what may be within this area. And the sign read, Rasira the Weaver. Weaver's Den. And there appeared to be a spider. curious.
Hello, fleshling. How may I help you?
Victor has to hold his tongue, recalling that this is not the material plane. Others may not know it, but as a wizard, Victor does. In the planes, everyone can be anything of any race. Demons can be shopkeepers, and humans can be evildoers. It doesn't really matter. So instead of asking the more obvious and insulting question, he would instead say, "Who are you?"
My name is Yasira, and yes, I am a spider.
You can be quite the cynical, sarcastic asshole. I think Victor would probably choose the middle ground again. I can see that. How does a spider become the proprietor of a shop?
My story is not all that interesting. Like many others, here I am awakened. One day I stopped feeling the call of blood and flesh, and instead I heard her voice. The voice of the shadow. Like many others, I followed.
Victor would be curious exactly what she means by awakened. Was it something the Shadow Mistress was capable of? That she awakened the sentience within different monsters?
I mean my realization. One day I was a bloodthirsty hunter like so many of my kind. Then I heard the voice, and my hunger was abated. Now my sustenance is my art, and my art is my weave. Would you like to see my wares? That is why you came, yes?
Well, yes, Victor was curious about what they may sell in an extraplanar shop, but he is also still quite curious, so he'd like to ask some questions first. The Weaver looked at Victor and smiled, which was quite discerning from a spider.
Of course. What do you wish to ask of me?
Tell me more about this voice you heard.
I heard the voice of the one who is lost, the Queen. She is trapped here like so many others. She calls to those she thinks can save her. She called to me, but in doing so, she freed me, not herself. In this place of darkness, blood and flesh no longer feed my fury. My instincts lead only now to the web and to the weave. It is her curse, some say, or her blessing, to call those to freedom, yet be bound herself. Now, for me, her voice has quelled, and I only hear it faintly and infrequently.
Of course, Victor would still be curious, so he'd want to ask more. Tell me more of this place, please.
You are in the plane of shadows. Impressive, is it not? A vast world of black, bathed in eternal twilight. a stagnant, inactive world of unlight. Yet it is not so inactive. The entire plane of shadows is alive. The darkness that has always lingers has never ever stopped moving. Perhaps intelligence is behind this movement. Perhaps intent. I am uncertain in this regard. What I do know is that for the first time I am content. For the first time my belly is full and my hunger is satisfied. For the first time I know peace. Of course, my story is unusual. It is not a story shared by many others, and not a story shared by the Queen herself.
What else can you tell me about the Shadow Queen? I've had very limited interactions with her.
There are many legends surrounding the Shadow Queen. Some say she is but illusion, given life by the magic of this dark place. Others say she is a demoness from beyond the pale, come to this plane to taunt and draw others to doom. I, of course, have my own theories. Like you and I, the Queen was once an individual, yet a powerful one. Perhaps an aspect of power itself. Perhaps a pale vision of a great goddess, such as Shah, or an aspect of Mask. But then she got into the way of the Shadow Lord. The Shadow Lord devised a trap for our queen. Lured into the shadows, she came to this place and lost her power, her divinity here. Now she beckons for freedom from the one who has trapped her.
And with that, he's asked as much as he can, really. It's a lot of information for him to chew on and contemplate, and he's quite certain that the others he asks around this area will more than likely have similar information for him and different opinions of this plane. It was of shadow and chaos, after all. But for now, he'd be interested in what she was selling.
I am a weaver of cloth and fabrics. I can knit custom clothing for you to match almost any design you can imagine. For a fee, I can also alter the garments you wear. In addition, certain magical cloths materials I can craft into unique and wondrous items. Finally, I sell certain crafted muskmen of my own, and materials to those who wish to weave themselves.
Interesting. So she can alter pre-made cloth-based items, assumingly retaining their enchanted properties. For now, he will look at the items that she may have in her store. Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. If you'd like to see future content, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification icon. If you'd like access to bonus content, such as special privileges on my personal Discord, extra information on my stories and world building, or perhaps simply wish to support my work here, please consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. Thank you for all your time, and I can't wait to see you in the next chapter of our story.